you got two choices, right? You either can just kind of quit, throw in the towel, right? Or you can bounce back, right? And you can never surrender. You can never give up. And I like to say, keep your head up and stay in the fight, right? Keep your head up and stay in the fight. That would be a good affirmation to a parent to a child, because this game will knock you down. There's a lot of adversity, and you don't have to be necessarily tough physically to be great at golf, but you have to be tough emotionally and mentally to excel at this game. And I think parents, they play a pretty big role in that, maybe sometimes a bigger role than they think.
Welcome to The Golf Parent, where you get access to the best minds in junior golf.
Brian, thank you so much for joining me today.
Ryan, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Okay, so for those in the audience that aren't familiar with what a college placement company or a recruiting company does, what does P3 Recruits do?
Yeah, good question. So P3 Recruits is it's a college placement service, and consulting. It started by two players of mine that I coached at Kentucky. So I coached for 22 years at the University of Kentucky, and Mark Blakefield and Matt Wells were a couple guys that I had the privilege of coaching. They actually did some historic things at Kentucky. They led us to a 2005 SEC championship, which was the first in Kentucky's history. And some
Amazing.
top eight. I think we had a couple with that team, a couple of top eight NCAA, so kind of elite eight finishes in the NCAA. And we got together a few months ago and said, let's start, a college placement, a recruiting service to help these kids hopefully find a great home to have the same experience that they had and that I also had. I played college golf at University of Florida, had a great experience there, life-changing kind of experience, and we want to help as many kids as we can have that same experience.
So what are you finding then that like where's the sticky point in the process? I mean, from a parent's point of view, is it just the wealth of options? Is it not knowing exactly how to reach out to coaches? Like what are you finding is the most surprising thing from a parent's point of view when they work with you that you guys kind of provide as a service that maybe they didn't realize that they needed or were confused about?
Well, I tell you what we've found, what we've learned in this, Ryan, is if you have an elite resume, and there's only a few people out there that have an elite resume, right? They don't have any problems.
No.
But if you're a half a step below that, maybe not even a full step below that, but a half a step to a step below that, it's tough to get some communication going with coaches because they're just getting bombarded with emails and phone calls and all this about players. And they've only got, a certain amount of time to actually see people. There's a lot of people that I think are good players, that are worthy players, that do not get a look by a school that they could be a great fit at. So, for example, we have a student. This kid's a legitimate Division I player. I mean, he can play. He's a junior in high school right now, so he's a 2026, and he had probably 50 emails out to Division I coaches, and probably had less than 10 even replies. Okay, not 10 just no's, like literally just replies. And we've been able to come in and target the appropriate schools for him, and then help him with that communication with the coaches, obviously. But then just, I have a great network because I coached forever, right? I coached for 22 years at Kentucky and 26 years overall. And Mark and Matt know a lot of people in the business too. So we're very fortunate to have a big network. And then just say to those coaches like, hey, we've vetted this kid. He can help your program. Give him a look. Give him an evaluation. And then if we can get that communication going and they give him a look and we get enough of that going on, the kid will land at the right spot. But it's kind of hard to land at the right spot if you're not even getting any communication going with these coaches. And there's just a lot. It's very competitive, as you know, to find a Division I spot. But even Division II and Division III, it's not easy. But certainly Division I is very difficult.
So in this day and age, in let's just say all the different divisions, Division I, II, and III, in college golf, are scouts being sent out to watch the kids play in tournaments? Are like I guess splash reels of the kids being sent to the actual golf coaches to kind of look at the highlights? Like, how are coaches making their decisions and knowing and sorting through the plethora of players that they can choose from?
Yeah, so at the top level, those coaches, they have a pretty good recruiting budget and they can get out, right? They can get out.
Yeah.
They have an assistant coach and themselves. So they actually, nowadays, you even can have two assistant coaches. Not every school funds that, but you're allowed to have that. And they can get out and recruit. You're not allowed to have any scouts go out and recruit for you. Like, that's an NCAA violation. You can't actually pay somebody else to do that. You can have somebody like us give you information because we're paid by the students, the clients, but the school itself can only have the staff recruit, right? That's on the coaching staff.
Gotcha.
So
Sure.
So the bottom line is, if you're a big school, yeah, you can get out more, you can see more kids, but not everybody has a recruiting budget where they can get out and spend the whole summer on the road watching kids play golf, right? You think about these college coaches, they're busy all fall with their schedule. The Thanksgiving, Christmas times is a dead period. They can't do a lot of coaching around there. And then they're crazy busy through the spring. Like right now, as we speak, they've just, you're just tournaments all the time. So you have the summer, right? Well, there's only so much you can do in the summer. You can't see everybody and every day. So that's where somebody, like P3 recruits, we can really help. And then when you're talking about the smaller level schools, like lower tier Division I, Division II, Division III, of course, you also have NAIA and even junior college. They don't have big recruiting budgets to get out. So they're relying a lot more on people they trust, credible sources coming to them and saying, hey, this person can play for you, or this lady can play for you, this junior golfer can play for you. And then they can get the communication going. They can vet them a little bit, but they're not going to be out spending thousands and thousands of dollars watching all these kids play because they don't quite frankly have it in the budget.
That makes sense. Okay, Brad, I'm going to ask you to go into a time machine. I'm not going to ask you to go that far back, but I'm going to ask you to go back to your role as a head coach of a golf program. If you've got 10 different, I guess, resumes or golfers that are coming across your desk, and all of them are equal to the most part when it comes to like scoring, they can all play. They're very similar with the number of wins in tournaments, etc. What are you looking for when it comes to maybe the intangibles, or like what were you looking for when it came to choosing who you wanted to invite into your program?
Yeah, that's the hard part, right? That's why you're getting paid the big money to figure that out, and it's hard, and it certainly is not it's not a science, right? It's a lot of gut instinct. But what I would look for would be a couple of things. One, if you have a lot that are equal like that, like one, let's make sure we have somebody that we're going to bring in that's going to be a good teammate, right? They're
Yeah.
going to be somebody that you want to coach, that their teammates are going to want to hang around with, that they're going to be somebody that can just be a great teammate, because it's a small bus that we're on in golf. And if you have one or two bad eggs, it can be really bad. Football or some of these bigger roster sports, it's maybe a little different. Golf, you're only talking about, back in my day, you're talking about, roughly speaking, say 10 to 12 players. With the NCAA restrictions that are on the way, they're going to 9, right? So you've got a small number of people that are actually on that team. So I want a great teammate. We're certainly going to look at the academics. And the reason for that is a couple of things. One, we want a low maintenance player. We don't want a player we got to worry about. Is he going to go to class, or is she going to take these properly prepare for these exams and not do well? And now we're at a tournament and they're worried about failing the chemistry class when we're trying to focus and compete, right? So good students are not only good because you want good students, obviously, but it helps your golf, right? It helps your golf to be able to have all of your ducks in a row, per se, so that when you get out the golf course, it's kind of your sanctuary. You can practice, you can focus, you can, whether it's practice or a tournament, you're not worried about a 20-page paper that's due Monday when you get back and you haven't started it. Right. So I really do think being a good student, buttoned up with your academics, and that doesn't mean you have to have the highest GPA, but it means you have to be conscientious, right? You have to care, you have to try, you can't procrastinate. You've got to keep up and with your work. And if you do that, I honestly believe it helps your golf. Okay. So we're gonna look at those. And then the third thing, honestly, here's the question I used to always ask myself was, if it was an elite player that you had a chance to get, okay, you felt like, all right, they're pretty proven. They've got a chance to come in, even as big a jump as it is, Ryan, to go from junior golf to college golf at the SEC level where I was. You feel like they've got a chance to do that if they're an elite player, a proven player. But if they're just a little below that, I used to always ask myself, like, what could this person be by the beginning of their sophomore year? Like, what ceiling do they have? What kind of upside do they have? And I would kind of go through that freshman year, just give them a chance to adjust, adapt, whether they play or don't play, redshirt or not redshirt. But by the second year, what could they possibly be? And that's a lot of gut instinct. You're looking at how they play the game. You're looking at their fundamentals. You're looking at their length. You're looking at their, some coaches might focus more on accuracy than length, right? It's a gut thing there. You're looking at how they carry themselves, their demeanor. Do they walk with their chin up and their chest out, no matter if they just made 3 bogeys in a row? You're looking at all that kind of stuff, and then you're trying to figure out, like, who is going to be the best out of all those. And quite frankly, it's very difficult to do, but that's what you're paid to do.
That makes sense. I want to go back and circle back to what you had said about being a good teammate and being coachable. Let's go to the opposite side of that then. So as a parent with maybe a younger junior right now, you're always trying to instill certain values and intangibles into them. So from a coach's or a recruiter's point of view, what would be the opposite of like what would be the toxic traits, if you will, that you've seen in players that you would not want at all to have on your team?
Yeah, so we've obviously seen that, and we've all experienced that. Anybody that's coached for years have certainly experienced that. So we want players obviously that are going to be coachable, and I'm not opposed to having a player that's got a little bit of a hard head. Like I coached JB Holmes. He's a strong-willed young man, right? Like it's one of the reasons that makes him really, really good. But on the same token, he still was coachable. Like we still had a great relationship. In fact, I just caddied for him in a PGA Tour event last fall. And he's 41 or 2 years old now. Like he's has played on the tour for 20 plus years now, but injured right now, unfortunately. But that was the last event that he made the cut in. So we're looking for players that obviously one are going to be coachable. We're looking for players that I feel like lift other people up. So the way I look at it is you have two kinds of athletes, right? You have stars, and that's easy if you're a star, right? You can see the accolades, you can see the talent, but then you have champions. And I think champions are the kind of people that not only are they really good themselves, but they bring the people around them up a notch, right? They make the people around them better. And you're trying, and that's a unique person to find. And you're trying to find that person, obviously, to be on your golf team because it's let me tell you what the environment's like on a golf team. If you don't mind, I'll tell you this little story. This is what I would tell recruits
Please.
sometime. This is what it's like. Okay. So you look at basketball right now, March Madness is going on right now. Okay. Right. The SEC tournament's going on right now. I was watching it just before you and I got on here. Right. Well, the whole team is on the bench. They're all there. They're all at dinners. They're all at the shoot around. They're all at practice. They're all, even if you don't play in the game, you're there. Right. Well, golf is not that kind of sport. You travel with the people that play and the other people stay at home. Right. It's a different dynamic. So you have to have a person that has the character and the maturity that can lose a qualifier, let's say, for the last spot, but then shake that person's hand and say, hey, man, go play great at the tournament. I'll be pulling for you. And then still go out to dinner that night. Or maybe they're in the same dorm room. Maybe they're staying in the same dorm room even. And this guy just beat that guy for a trip to California from Kentucky or a trip to Puerto Rico, let's say, from Kentucky. And they got to sleep beside each other and be friends, right? Because that guy who lost, he's not going, right? So it's kind of like if you had 10 kids and you were a mom and dad and you said, hey, kids, we're going on this incredible vacation. We're going to Hawaii. It's going to be awesome. But we can only take 5 of you, right? So we're going to have this competition, this qualifying competition to see which 5 go. Well, that's what college golf is like. Not everybody travels. So you have to have some special people that can buy into the team and make the team better, even if they're not playing. And we would say is work while you wait, right? So maybe you're not starting right now, but keep working and be ready for your opportunity and still lift the guys up around you. And let me tell you something, that's a hard trait to find. You can find it, but it's not that easy because we're all competitive and we all want to play.
It's I feel like it's almost a catch-22 here where you want to find those players, I'm assuming, that have that bit of a dog in them, that have that bit of a competitive fire where when they're out there on the course, they're I've heard the term competitive selfishness almost, where it's like they really want to win, but then also you want them to be, like you said, emotionally mature enough to be a good teammate and still be supportive. Going now to the other side to be in that championship or that superstar mindset, like what have you seen then from there? Because I know you guys work a lot with helping to foster and to help kind of nurture the mental side of the game and mental side of tournament play. What have you seen then? Maybe 3 or so items when it comes to like the right elite type of mindsets to be a champion and to play very well.
Oh yeah, I had the privilege of one, obviously not just coaching at Kentucky for 22 years, but I coached. I was a head coach at UCF for 2 years for Kentucky, and I was assistant coach at Florida for 2 years, which is where I played, and then I was there for 5 years at Florida. So I've been around. That's 31 years of being around a lot of really good players, right? A lot of elite golfers, and I learned a lot from those guys. I learned a lot from watching them, and there's people that end up being great, whether it's the college level or on to professional that hit it right to left. They hit it left to right. Some hit it higher than others. Some are better, drivers, and some are better wedge players or iron players. You see a lot of different. Some structure their practices even differently. I've seen guys that just had to play. Some guys that just had to beat balls. That were equally great players. And the couple traits, honestly, that I feel like were absolutely present in every elite athlete that I ever coached or was around were, number one is desire, right? Number one is they wanted it. They got out of the bed every morning wanting it more than anybody else. That's what they wanted to do. They didn't let the distractions of college get in the way. Like when you get to college, there's a lot of distractions, right? You can find something social to do every night, right? There's things that you shouldn't be in or shouldn't be partaking in if you're a driven athlete. And those guys and gals that are like that, they have that desire. They can stay on the straight and narrow, right? So that desire, in my opinion, that trumps everything, right? That is the one thing. And let me say, that desire has to come from the player. It's not from the parent, right? So I know this is the golf parent, right, podcast. Let me say that if you're a parent, that the player has to be driving the car, right? They have to be driving the car. Now you're going to put gas in it and you're going to change the tires because you're resourcing them to be successful. But I tell you what, there's no we in this. It's the player, and you are the supporter and the helper and the encourager. And it's fine to kick him in the rear end if that's your style because they had a bad attitude or because they threw a club or whatever. But in my opinion, the worst thing you can do is get on them or make them feel any less loved, even by 0.5% because they just didn't play well, right? And I've seen it before, and it's sad, and it's very, very detrimental to the not just the golf health of the student athlete, but the overall health of the student athlete. Like, how hard is it to play if you feel like your parents are going to love you? Maybe not quite as much because you're not a great player or you're not at the team. You didn't make the qualifier, right? You didn't make the trip. So that desire, like it's the player. The player's got to want it. It's got to be them driving the bus, driving the car. They're the ones that have to say, "Hey, Dad, when they're younger, take me to practice. I want you to take me before they can drive. Hey, take me to I want to go practice." Like that's the kind of the person that really excels and becomes elite. All right, and then the second trait I would say is what we called Moxie. And that is, it's obviously self-confidence, but to me, it's deeper than self-confidence. It kind of supersedes your circumstances. It supersedes anything else that's going on, is that you believe that you have what it takes, that you belong, and that you can get there, right? And I'll give you a perfect example of this. I played in this was probably like 1986 or 7. I played in the Junior Worlds out in Torrey Pines in San Diego. And Phil Mickelson at that time Phil and I were about the same age. I think he's a year younger than me. And he was everything, right? Like he was the best thing in junior golf by far, right? I mean, it was unbelievable how good this guy was. We're playing in San Diego in a huge tournament. Back then, that tournament was actually even bigger than it is now. And he's going to win it, right? He's in his backyard. Well, he's winning it going to the last day. He shoots like 80 the last day. This is Phil Mickelson, who at that point is already elite. I mean, he is better than you can dream up, basically. And he shoots like 80 the last day in his hometown. And I remember I still have a vivid picture of this. This is kind of how impactful it was to me. I finished. I wasn't near the lead, but I was finished before him, and I was around the scoring area. And I remember thinking, like, oh my gosh, like when it came out, he shot 80 because we didn't have live scoring back then, so it got posted on the board. And I thought, oh my gosh, he's got to be devastated, right? Hometown, About that time, he comes strolling by about 10 yards from me. He's got some people around him. Let me tell you something. The way he was walking, the way he was carrying himself, you'd have thought he just won the tournament by 10 shots. There was not a dent in his armor or his moxie because he just shot 80 to blow a tournament. He was walking through there like, it's no big deal. I got it. I know one day I'm going to end up winning X number of majors and 40 tour events or whatever he's done. He's done so much, all these Ryder Cups, and that's moxie, right? It's deeper and it's more. It's unshakable confidence in yourself, and it doesn't depend on your circumstances.
I love that. First of all, the word moxie is just a great word. I mean, we don't use it enough, but yeah, it's a great word. So if you've got a kid that's got all the talent in the world, he's got the desire, but he's struggling with the confidence or the moxie, can we foster that? Is that something that's inherent, or is that something that we can kind of pull out of them?
You can. I'm glad you asked that question because I do think some people are just born with it. I really do. Mickelson might have been born with it. JB Holmes, who I coached, he was born with it. He kind of had it. But I had a number of players over the years where I could see how good they could be, and they had a hard time seeing it. And I can even, one player in particular, a young man that I coached named Cooper Musselman. He's from Louisville, Kentucky. He came in as a freshman. He wasn't good enough to play. He redshirted. But man, I'm just looking at this kid. I'm like, one day it's coming. Like, it's coming. But I could tell he didn't really believe. Like, he was kind of like, well, I think I'm pretty good. I'm not sure. And so we used to have these meetings, and I remember I used to always ask him. I would just point blank ask him, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you believe in yourself right now? And it was fun to see that grow throughout the years of his college career. Because when he first started off, he was honest with me. We had a great relationship, and he would just say, like, coach, it's like a 5. Like, I think I'm pretty good, but I'm not sure. And then, like, the next year, he'd kind of grown a little bit more, and we talked about it, to be honest with you. And I watched him grow and grow and grow. And as we speak, he's on the Corn Ferry tour right now. He made it to the final stage of Q school, ended up being a terrific college player after redshirting his freshman year because he wasn't good enough to start. Right? He developed, and with him, a lot of it was that confidence and that moxie. Some of it was just he needed to get a little stronger and bigger and put some weight on, but a lot of it was just believing in himself. So it absolutely is possible to do that. And any young people that are out there that are struggling, with that, like, listen, you can bust through. That's a barrier you can bust through, but you have to watch your self-talk, right? You have to watch your self-talk. Like I can watch you walk down the fairway and I can think one thing, but if inside that self-talk isn't there to, and I'm not saying it has to be like some frou-frou positive self-talk. I'm just saying it has to be a deep-seated belief. And if you are upset or whatever it is, inside, you still have to be able to turn that around and be like, okay, watch this. Watch me come back from this. I can handle this. I can do this, right? So that self-talk, I think, is a way that you can grow into that, and you can become that very confident person. I mean, Tom Watson, when he was young, used to be known for choking away leads on the PGA Tour, right? That guy busted through that barrier, and now is one of the great, history of the game. So I absolutely believe that you can develop that and you can improve there.
I came to golf late in life, and it was one of the things that surprised me most. Playing golf with friends or strangers or whoever, but there's something about this beautiful game that reveals so much about a person, and oftentimes it's what they say after a shot. It's usually a bad shot, and you get a little window into their self-talk because for some reason, oftentimes it's verbalized out loud. And I would think to myself, I'm like, wow, if that's what they're saying out loud to themselves, what are they saying internally to
Inside.
themselves? Oh yeah, and it's often vicious. Like you're not usually hearing somebody pumping their own tires and like giving themselves pep talks and like I just thought it was very interesting. There's something about the game that just draws that out in us. So okay, so I'm gonna throw it back to you, Brian. If you were then to take a young mind, young, let's just say 5 to 10, and you were to instill maybe 3 beliefs, maybe let's get a little woo woo here, but like 3 like beliefs or 3 sentences or affirmations or something that they could tell themselves over and over, or you could tell them as a parent that you feel like down the road would absolutely benefit them in their junior golf game. What would be some things that you would kind of instill belief wise in the child?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, and one that I'll probably ponder after this podcast, really, because I think first of all, when they're that young, and this isn't necessarily like an affirmation or anything, but I think if you're the parent, you've got to make it fun, right? Like, it has to be fun to go to the golf course, to hit golf balls. This is a game, and games are supposed to be fun. They're supposed to be enjoyable, right? So particularly when you're at that young of an age, like, it's got to be fun. There can't be any kind of false created pressure or something. Like, do some fun stuff. Let them ride in the cart with you, occasionally. If they're old enough, let them sit on your lap, drive the cart, because then they love to go out to the golf course. So they might get to drive the golf cart, and in the process of all that, they might fall in love with the game of golf, so definitely keep it light, keep it fun at that age. Again, for the parents out there, I mean, I can't even tell you how many like prodigies or phenoms I've seen or known about when they were really young that either didn't even play college golf or were not very good in college golf. And that's not the goal. This is a side note, but I always say the goal is not to be the best 15-year-old or 16-year-old. The goal is to keep improving and getting better and learning and seeing how great you can become, seeing how far you can take it. So at that age, keep it light, right? And other than that, I just think from an affirmation standpoint, from a parent to a child, or I think it's just, hey, I believe in you. Like you can do this. I see something in you that if you really take to this game one day, I think you could be great. I think you could handle this. I think you could be special, and even say that during the face of adversity when bad stuff happens. I'll give you a perfect example. One of our hopefully future students, we just had a call with them today, and it's a young girl. She's very young, and the dad, it was awesome, and I think he got a great mindset for raising an athlete. And we were talking about that kind of stuff, and he said, well, I knew she had it when I was caddying for. This is when you're the really young. Sometimes the parents caddy, like she was like 5th grade, something like that, and she made like a huge number on a par 3. And a kid that age, she was devastated, right? She had a chance to win this little golf tournament she was playing. It was kind of a big deal to her. And the dad said, she asked me on the next hole, like, Dad, what do I do? She was looking for some direction. And the dad said, well, we can go to the clubhouse and we can just stop, or we can keep playing these next 5 or 6 holes and see if we can make some 4s and 5s and do something. Right. And he said the next 5 or 6 holes, I think it was 5 or 6, was one of the highlights of his life, of spending time on the golf course with his daughter, because she bounced back, she played well, and she won by 1 shot. All right. She won by 1 shot. Now, granted, this is a young age, right? You're not winning
but
some
still.
huge tournament. But the lesson there was incredible. You got 2 choices, right? You either can just kind of quit, throw in the towel, right? Or you can bounce back, right? And you can never surrender. You can never give up. And I like to say, keep your head up and stay in the fight, right? Keep your head up and stay in the fight. That would be a good affirmation to a parent to a child, because this game will knock you down. There's a lot of adversity, and you don't have to be necessarily tough physically to be great at golf, but you have to be tough emotionally and mentally to excel at this game. And I think parents, they play a pretty big role in that, maybe sometimes a bigger role than they think.
Absolutely. And that's the whole premise of the podcast, is realizing as a young dad myself that I'm like, we really do. Like, you start looking at your own childhood, you start looking back and realizing how many beliefs, both positive and negative, how much of your own kind of patterns of thought and all the rest that were instilled in you very, very young, often unintentionally. And you realize when you have a child that it's like, it's up to you to kind of direct and impart the thought process and all the things that you can kind of control. And if you can be intentional about it, if you can be kind of focused, and if you can have that intentionality really is the biggest word behind it, where you realize that what you're doing is having a downstream effect on the child, either positive or negative. So
That's right.
at least try and go in neutral or positive. But
That's right. Yeah.
it's like avoiding the big blow up numbers on the golf course. So avoid the negative stuff. At least make it neutral.
Can I tell you a story that a parent told me of a kid that I coached that encapsulates, I think, what a parent should be like in mentoring a student athlete?
Please.
Okay. So like I mentioned earlier, I had the privilege of coaching JB Holmes. He's won 5 times on tour. He's played 2 Ryder Cups, a President's Cup. He played Walker Cup when he was an amateur. He was the SEC Player of the Year, 4-time All-American. Okay. So he's had back injuries and stuff the last couple of years and hadn't done much, but the guy's a stud, right? Like, he's a star, and went straight from college to the PGA Tour. He's never even played a mini tour event or a Corn Ferry Tour event. Like, he literally went from college to playing the Walker Cup to on the PGA Tour. Okay. His dad, who was a good athlete, and I don't think his dad, I know, wouldn't mind me telling this, I tell it all the time. His dad was a good athlete. He was a baseball player. And he had that mentality of, the harder you try, you grit down, you bear, that kind of stuff, which honestly in golf, doesn't always, it really doesn't usually work. Right. We're different. This isn't like hit somebody harder, run faster, that kind of stuff. So he said, and this is the dad telling me about JB Holmes when he was in college here in Kentucky. He said, here's when I learned my lesson. He said, we were at some tournament. He didn't play well, and I got on him. Like this, JB's dad flat out just said, I kind of got on him. Well, like I mentioned earlier, JB's got kind of got a hard head, right? He's pretty strong willed. And at this point he was like 13 years old, something like that. And he said, JB looked right at me and said, well, Dad, if you can do any better, I'd like to see it. And his dad took that as a challenge and said, okay, let's play tomorrow. And he said, okay. So they have a tee time the next day at their course in Campbellsville, Kentucky. And they go out there, and of course, JB's, he's intent on wearing his dad out because he's a little fired up. And they apparently they had a competitive match. It wasn't like a father son, hey, good putt, Pat. It was more like, I'm going to beat you, and you're going to try to beat me, right? And he goes out there, and JB just wore him out, just literally blitzed him, wore him out. And they get done playing, and he says, my son looks me in the eye, and he says, "See, Dad, it's not as easy as I make it look." And his dad, and this is a true story, and I saw this live out in person for the 4 years that JB was here. His dad, he said, from that moment forward, no matter if he shot 65 or 82, he said at the end of the round, I gave him a hug and I told him I loved him. And if it was the last day of the tournament, I said, for a college event, travel home safely. We'll talk to you tomorrow. And he did that. I saw it for 4 years. It didn't matter what JB shot, where he finished. He gave him a hug. He told him he loved him. And he said, we'll talk tomorrow. And you know what? 4-time All-American, straight to the tour. Like this guy, couple Ryder Cups. He won. He's been a part of 2 Ryder Cups, 1 President's Cup, won them all. I mean, you don't get a whole lot better than that without being Tiger Woods or somebody like that, right? Like JB is a legit stud, and the way his dad handled him growing up, that is a model, in my opinion, for all parents.
What a unique passing of the torch moment between a father and a son as well, where the son, oftentimes, you've got this larger than life figure that's your father or your parent for so much of your life, and at some stage there's almost that kind of like a leveling out where you're like, no, I'm stepping into becoming my own man now. And what an impactful moment for both the father and son,
It
and
was. It
all of
really
us
was.
listening too.
Yeah, I love that story, and I think it hits the nail on the head on how to parent a golf athlete. A golf athlete.
So at P3 Recruits, you guys help, families and juniors with the college coaching or the college recruiting aspect, and, helping to get them noticed and to get them, hopefully placed in the school of their choice or close to. But that's not all you guys do. You guys are also doing some other things as well. What's the other side of the business that you're focusing on?
So we saw, Ryan, a big need in junior golf of what we would call performance coaching or golf development coaching. All these young people, they have swing instructors, and they should. Like, I think that's a huge part of the equation. I think you all, if you don't have one, and you're a serious golfer out there, I think you should have somebody that you really trust that can help you with your fundamentals and your technique on your golf swing. But the way the model is for junior golf, unless you're just in a really unusual situation, you get an hour lesson, and then the next person's waiting to come, for their lesson, and then you just kind of go figure it out. And so you're kind of getting this technique lesson on a flat lie, maybe even inside in a simulator, hitting into a net, and it's not the dynamic game that we play. So what we're doing, and we love doing this, and Mark Blakefield and Matt Wells and I, this is something we thoroughly enjoy, is helping people to young players to train, to tournament prep, to course manage, more like a professional, right? How do you prepare? How do you train? How do you think? More like a pro, or at least an elite, college player, and using modern day analytics, mindset, like everything 100 yards and in. We do everything 100. We love teaching all the scoring 100 yards and in shots, but all of that kind of stuff. We love doing, and that's what I did for all the years of coaching. All these kids came in with swing coaches, and what I was trying to do was help them learn how to put it all together and play better golf. And I learned a lot, over my years of how to do that. And Mark, like I said, Mark, my partner, he's won 20 plus professional events, played Korn Ferry Tour for 6 or 7 years. Like, he's very, very accomplished player, but he also had a chance to work with a lot of great instructors and great minds in the game. And I just think he's developed into a fabulous coach, instructor, coach, everything. He knows how to play golf. He knows how to help people, play their best golf. And so we love doing that. And that's another package that we offer. And then hopefully in the near future, we're going to start having some like 2 and 3 day, like performance camps, clinics throughout the country. And that's our vision, is to have something like that hopefully in the near future.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, and what an invaluable resource, because as junior golf is getting more and more competitive, a lot of people can swing and hit the ball well. And it's often those little things like the strategy, the mindset, the scoring focus that can be learned. And that oftentimes could be the difference. So yeah, I mean, vastly important and invaluable. What have you found that maybe just share one thing that around, let's just say 100 yards and in, when it comes to either the mindset or the strategy, that so many junior golfers just don't do. And if they did this one thing, that instantly they could shave off, one or two strokes every round just through this one kind of knowledge or tip or
Yeah.
something.
Well, I would say two things. With wedge play, it's all about learning to hit it the right flight with the right spin. All right. So the right trajectory with the right spin. And honestly, very few junior players do that well, like at the level like an elite college player or professional does. They tend to hit these higher wedges. They're kind of moon balls, kind of snow cone shots, we call them. And they're not these low flighted spinning wedges that's what you're going to hit 90% of the time. Every now and then you have to play a different type of shot because of the conditions, but for the most part, that proper wedge play, like it can take your game up a huge notch. All right. And the second thing I would say is, just from a course management standpoint, is we all have a dispersion with our whatever iron or club you're hitting. You have a dispersion, and if I had you hit 100 shots, to say, with that club on TrackMan, I could actually chart your dispersion. You'd even be able to see how far off the center line, left and right, and long and short, that your dispersion is. So it's kind of an elliptical dispersion is what it is. And course management, you're taking the middle of that dispersion, so kind of your center line, and you're learning how to put that on the proper target to give yourself the biggest margin for error when you play golf, so that you can then make aggressive swings at smart targets and just do that over and over again. And you'd be surprised at how many young players and even college players, they don't really understand how the game is played in terms of the targets with approach play, right? Like you'd be shocked at how conservative even a lot of tour players are with their approach play strategy, because they understand they have a dispersion there, right? They're not shooting a laser. They're shooting, it has a dispersion, and you have to move that target to the right spot so that hopefully your misses are still good. Your good shots are obviously still good. And then you're going to have plenty of green light opportunities throughout the round, because say it's an easy flag and you can take dead aim at it, or you have a par five that you're on or around the green in two, or you have a 70-yard wedge shot and you can kind of take dead aim at that, even maybe if the flag's a little tight. So learning how to manage your game like that from a course management standpoint can knock shots off your score, your tournament score, I'd say probably faster than anything.
That makes sense. I'm curious from a tournament standpoint, because when the pressure starts getting ratcheted up, oftentimes, those fundamentals and certain things start falling away. Hopefully not the fundamentals. Hopefully those are ingrained enough that you've got at least that foundation. But what advice would you give to, kids and their parents that maybe are taking part in their first tournaments, and maybe they're first really starting to take competitive golf, or dip their toes in it, and they're starting to enter into the tournaments? What can they expect? How can they arm themselves and best prepare themselves to kind of get through tournament play, which they may not be fully ready for?
Yeah, so I think Ben Hogan said it best, that there's golf and there's tournament golf, and they're not
Mm.
the same. And they're not the same. But here's the first thing I would say is, to get those butterflies going and get nervous like that. That's why we do it. You're like, that's why we go play tournament golf. Because if you practice all the time and you love the game of golf and you were out there working hard and you never got to challenge yourself and test yourself, you get bored after a while, right? Like it wouldn't be that much fun. But when you're a young player like that and you're competitive, like that's what you want. So first thing is, understand that you should be a little nervous. You should have some butterflies going, and you gotta be able to embrace that and understand that it's there to help you. It's there to help you focus better. Okay, it's there to help you play better, but it can be a little uncomfortable. All right, and so that's okay. That's the first thing, and then the second thing I would say, and this is going to sound really like me growing up. I think if somebody told me this, Ryan, I would probably laugh and think they're crazy. But now, because of the science we have, and because things have evolved a little bit, it is learning how to breathe properly and to focus on your breathing. Because when we get in situations like that where we're nervous, we breathe shallower and quicker. And so if you can learn how to just focus on it a little bit, it does a couple things. One, it will physically relax you. Like you can go on YouTube and you can see any of the different techniques for this, but it's basically all inhaling through the nose and exhaling out of the mouth. And usually you're exhaling out of the mouth a little slower than you inhale. There's different techniques you can find. There's something called the box technique. I know there's a few of them out there, but the point of it is, one, if you can pay attention to breathing a little bit when you get these moments like this, when you're kind of tight, you're nervous, it could be the end of a tournament. You have a chance to win, right? And the nerves are up. one, it does physically relax you, like scientifically, physically, it will relax you. But two, it gives you something healthy and positive to focus on so that you can tune out everything else, right? You can tune out all the distractions, all the noise, so that you can just be present and hopefully be able to, play your best golf, or at least hit your best, golf shot. So breathing, I think, is kind of it's become a big deal. There's even been some players before, professional players. I heard one in particular that used to be a former world number one. It said that learning how to breathe properly was the single most thing that helped him in competitive golf, right? When the nerves were up, right? That's a pretty good testament to, what it could do. And then the third thing is kind of what we talked about earlier, is I think you have to be aware of your self-talk, right? Like I want you to walk with your chin up and your chest out, but your head's got to be just as strong and just as clear. And so you got to pay attention to your self-talk. And if you find yourself going down that rabbit hole of negative self-talk, you just got to say, hey, stop, time out here, throw that out the window, and redirect yourself where, again, it doesn't have to be some frou-frou positive thing, but you gotta have a little toughness there and be like, you know what? I may be nervous. I may have messed up that last hole, but I can handle this. I can do this. Let's go. Right. Let's go, and turn it into some kind of positive, because self-talk is, one, it will ruin the enjoyment of the game, like negative self-talk, bad, self-sabotaging, I would call it self-talk. It will ruin the enjoyment of the game, and nobody wants that. And then two, it ain't going to help you play better. It's not like, maybe it doesn't, let's just say it's neutral. It doesn't help you play. It doesn't make you play worse. Well, I know it decreases the enjoyment of the game, and I know it's not going to help you play better. So why do it? Right. Like, be aware of that and figure out a way to turn that into a way where you can, get after yourself a little bit and say, I can handle this. Let's go. Watch this. Let's go. And then, you know what? Whatever happens, man, it's just golf, right? Whatever happens, if you learn from it to help you improve and get better, then that's success, right? And then at the end of the day, in competitive golf, if you learn something, no matter how you play, if you learn something to help you improve and grow, just to get better, then I would call that success.
I love it. Brian, I'm a high handicapper, 43-year-old grown man, but I'm feeling pumped. I'm feeling like if I gave you my splash reel, you could help me get in front of some of these good college coaches. And, I'm feeling ready. I'm feeling ready to enter into some tournaments. Listen, if parents that are listening right now, if they want to work with you and Mark and Matt, and they kind of want to learn a little bit more about what P3 Recruits does, what's the best way for them to find you and kind of get into your ecosystem?
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's just p3recruits.com, 3 the number, p3recruits.com. That's the website. And then we were also on all the social media under the same thing, P3 Recruits, Instagram, Facebook, and X, Twitter. It's all right there. You can schedule a free call. We typically love to do like a Zoom, so we can see face to face. We can talk, a little more personally. If you're close to us, we'll come see you in person. But if you're not, we can do it obviously over some type of Zoom or Google Meet type of call. And listen, if we're not the right people to help you, that's fine. But at least we can have that conversation to see if we can add any value to what you're trying to do.
I love that. Speaking of adding value, you've got the ears and eyes in often case of a lot of parents right now. What's maybe one thing that you would like to leave them thinking about, or maybe a little bit of wisdom that you can impart, or just maybe a different paradigm shift? Like, what would be one piece of advice that you'd give parents right now?
Yeah, I really think, I hate to reiterate it, but I think the parent has so much influence over the young person in sport, and not just golf, obviously any sport, but we're talking about golf, that if you can do everything in your power to just give them, the resource, if they're driven, if they have desire, right, and you can give them the resources to do it, then love them and support them no matter what happens performance wise. Okay, if they go out there and act like a unsportsmanlike person on the golf course, and you want to get on about that, I think that's totally fine. Right, that's totally fine. But let's not tie any kind of parental relationship into performance. Right, that's not healthy. We know how golf is. We know how up and down it is. Right, we know how up and down. I just think you can't do that. I think you have to. You have to, just like Mr. Holmes, JB's dad. Like, no matter how they play, you love them. You love them and you support them. no matter what happens. And I would tell you this, I had a player a number of years ago, Ryan, the greatest human being. Literally, I could put my hand on the Bible right now and say, this kid is the greatest human being I've ever been around in my entire life, named Cullen Brown. He was special, and anybody you asked would tell you that. Anybody, all right? He was a great player, but he was a better person, and he got cancer after his freshman year of me coaching him. The kid literally just finished. He got a sponsor's exemption into the tour event in our area at that time it was called the Barbasol. Now it's called the ISCO. And he got a sponsor's exemption into it, went shot 10 under par, made the cut, had a good finish. Like the scoring was low, but he still finished 52nd, made the cut in a PGA Tour event after his freshman year. All right. Finished top 10 in the SEC championship. This kid was awesome. I mean, he was the greatest human literally I have ever known. And he gets cancer right after that tournament, that PGA Tour event. He lives for about a year. It was aggressive bone cancer. He lived for about a year and he died. He passed away. And it was tragic. And his mom and dad, Rodney and Emily, are two of the finest people. And his sister Catherine is actually on the golf team in Kentucky now. But they are my family. Like they're as blood. I'm as blood with them as I am with my own family. That's what I think about these people. And they have an unbelievable perspective with golf. I mean, like they've got great value. Like they did it right. They're awesome. They're awesome. But here's a takeaway that I think any parent can relate to. Rodney was talking to a kid that played at that time. He played at the University of Florida, and this was about a year after his son had died. And they were down in Florida, I think, in the wintertime, training a little bit with his daughter Catherine. And somehow they struck up a conversation with this young man who was on the team at Florida. And Rodney and Emily, like they loved watching their kids play golf, right? They were the kind of family, like if you went to a tournament, you knew what group Cullen was in because the mom, the dad, the grandmas, the uncles, the cousins, the friends, they were all there. He always had the biggest gallery. Like he was incredible. But Rodney, the dad, who I couldn't love him anymore, he told this Florida kid, he said, I would give anything right now to watch Cullen play the worst round of golf of his life. The worst round. I give anything to watch it. And it was so profound to that kid at Florida that he got on the text message thread with the team at Florida. And he sent it out and he said, guys, I got to share this with you because this was unbelievable, this whole conversation. But here's what he said. And the Florida coach, who's a great friend of mine, JC Deacon, he contacted me like the next day. He said, man, I got to tell you this, because it was that powerful for all of them on just a little bit of a dose of reality that, yeah, we want to be great. Yeah, we want to be driven. Yes, we're pursuing excellence and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it's a game, right? It's a game. And that's not nearly as important as a life. And the parental relationship, like that's life right there, right? That's life. That's going to go on way past college golf or any kind of competitive golf. So just, parents, do it right, right? I think we all know how to do it right. Sometimes we just get so wound up because we want our kid to do well. And I get that, but we have to do it the right way where we give them the best chance at success. And no matter what happens, they know that mom and dad love them and have their back.
Love that. Impactful. I felt myself welling up just a little bit, but I'm going to hold tough and not let it affect me. But Brian, so much value here. I think it's a perfect place to kind of leave this conversation. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for sharing. And P3 Recruits, it's check it out if you're at that stage and you want to take your junior golfer to the next level and kind of help them get that professional advice and guidance to get into collegiate golf.
Thanks for having me, Ryan. It's been a pleasure.